Welcome to Pretty Tales, the home of gripping stories, shocking secrets, and dramatic twists.
I had planned a small test. Nothing serious, just something to see if she was truly loyal, a tiny trap to confirm my gut feeling. I thought I'd catch a little jealousy, maybe some irritation, but what I saw instead sent a chill down my spine. She wasn't angry, she wasn't sad, she wasn't even surprised. She sat calmly, like she had been waiting for me to discover her secret all along. Her eyes, I can still see them, empty, unreadable, almost otherworldly. The moment felt frozen. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding so loud it felt like the walls themselves were echoing it back at me. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong, something dark, something I had never faced before. I tried to speak, to break the silence. My mouth opened, but no words came out. And then I saw it, the faint glow of candlelight flickering in the corner of the room. Shadows danced across the walls, shifting unnaturally, as if they had a life of their own. It was at that moment I realized this test, this simple, foolish idea, was no longer about loyalty. It had become a doorway to secrets I was never meant to uncover. My name is Chukwudi. I'm not a special man. I'm not rich, not powerful, not spiritual in any extreme way. At the time this happened, I was just a married man trying to build a peaceful life in Benin City. I worked hard, came home every evening, prayed when I could, and trusted my wife completely. People around us often said we were lucky. They said our marriage was calm, quiet, drama-free. And I believed it. I believed love was enough to cover everything I didn't understand. I'm speaking now because keeping quiet nearly destroyed me. There are things I wish I had paid attention to earlier. Small things I brushed aside because I didn't want trouble in my home. I didn't want to look suspicious. I didn't want to appear controlling or paranoid. My wife had always been gentle with her words. Soft-spoken. She rarely argued. Even when we disagreed, she would smile and say, "Let's leave it like that." At first, I thought it was maturity. I thought I had married a woman of peace. But looking back now, I understand something painful. Silence can hide many things. Calmness can be a mask. And love, when mixed with fear, can make a man blind to the truth standing right in front of him. That night didn't start with shouting or violence. It started with quiet. A dangerous kind of quiet, the kind that makes you feel watched even when you are not alone. Before that night, my life felt ordinary in the best way. I woke up each morning beside my wife, prayed quietly in my heart, and went to work believing I was building something solid. We laughed together, we shared meals, we planned for the future. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. In Benin City, people often say, if your home is peaceful, thank God and don't ask questions. And that was exactly what I did. I thanked God, and I stopped asking questions. But there were small moments I ignored, not because they were loud or frightening, but because they were easy to explain away. My wife didn't like certain prayers I said at night. If I prayed out loud for protection or mentioned the name of Jesus too strongly, she would suddenly become uncomfortable. She never argued. She would just change the subject or tell me she was tired. There were also parts of the house she preferred to manage alone. A small storage room, a section of the wardrobe. She said it was about privacy, and I respected that. Marriage, after all, is built on trust. Sometimes I noticed she woke up earlier than me and stayed awake long after I slept. When I asked, she said she liked the quiet hours. That answer felt harmless, until I began to notice how often the quiet followed her. I remember one evening clearly. We were sitting together, the room bright, the windows open, the sounds of the street drifting in. I reached for her hand and asked, jokingly, if she ever kept secrets from me. She smiled, not nervously, not defensively, just calmly. She said, "Everyone has things they don't talk about." At the time, I laughed it off. Now, those words echo in my mind. Because I realized something important. The signs were never hidden. I simply chose not to see them. The idea to test her didn't come from anger. It came from confusion, from that quiet feeling that something in my home didn't fully belong to me. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, but my heart refused to rest. One afternoon after work, while sitting alone in traffic, the thought came to me clearly: what if I test her loyalty, not to accuse her, but to reassure myself? It sounded harmless in my mind. I wasn't planning to cheat. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to see a reaction. Something human, something emotional, something that told me she cared enough to feel threatened. So that evening, casually, I mentioned a woman from work. I said she had been overly friendly. I laughed as I said it, pretending it was nothing serious. Inside, my chest tightened as I waited for a response. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't question me. She didn't even look surprised. She simply paused, looked at me for a long moment, and smiled. Not the kind of smile that says, "I trust you." The kind that says, "I already know." She asked no questions. Instead, she went to the kitchen and began preparing food as if nothing had happened. Her calmness unsettled me more than anger ever could. That was when I felt it, the heavy silence again. The kind that presses against your chest and makes you doubt your own thoughts. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself this was just her personality. But deep down, I knew something important had shifted. The test I thought I was controlling had turned into something else entirely. And I couldn't take it back. Later that night, after the house had settled and the familiar sounds of Benin City faded into the distance, I repeated the story again, just to be sure. I mentioned the woman one more time, lightly, as if it meant nothing. This time, my wife stopped what she was doing. She turned slowly and looked at me. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. It was as if she was no longer listening to my words, but to something else. Then she smiled. She said quietly, "I knew you would try something like that." Those words sent a cold feeling through my body. I laughed nervously and asked her what she meant. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up and reached for a small candle from the shelf. At first, I thought she was just trying to calm herself. But she lit another, and then another. She placed them neatly, carefully, like it was something she had done many times before. The room remained bright, but the mood changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the walls were listening. She began whispering softly, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for me to notice the sound without understanding the words. I asked her what she was doing. She turned to me and said, "You worry too much. Go and rest." Her voice was gentle, too gentle. I returned to the bedroom, but sleep refused to come. My mind replayed her smile again and again. That wasn't jealousy. That wasn't anger. That wasn't indifference. It was certainty. And in that moment, I realized the test I thought would bring reassurance had only confirmed my fear. I wasn't dealing with something emotional. I was dealing with something hidden. Something intentional. I lay on the bed that night with my eyes closed, pretending to sleep. My back was turned to her, but every part of me was awake. I listened to the sound of her breathing, steady and calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. That calm disturbed me more than any argument ever could. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Outside, the distant sounds of Benin City carried on as usual: a passing motorcycle, a dog barking somewhere, faint voices from the street. Inside our home, everything felt suspended, like time was holding its breath. After a while, I heard her stand up. The mattress shifted gently. Her footsteps were soft, careful, as if she didn't want to wake me. I stayed still. I counted my breaths. My heart was beating too fast, and I feared she might hear it. She left the bedroom. At first, I told myself not to follow her. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that fear was making stories in my head. But then I heard it, a soft sound, not loud enough to be obvious, but deliberate enough to be noticed. Movement, not hurried, not clumsy, purposeful. I slowly sat up, my feet touching the floor as quietly as possible. The tiles were cool under my skin. I paused, listening again. The sound was coming from the far side of the house, the area she usually didn't like me entering. I walked slowly, every step careful, my chest tight with something between fear and disbelief. As I approached the corridor, I noticed a faint light. Not bright, not dark, just enough to outline shapes. The door to the storage room was open. That alone was strange. She always kept it closed. I stood at a distance, my hand resting against the wall. From where I was, I could see part of the room, shelves neatly arranged, the space clean, nothing chaotic. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I saw the table. It wasn't something dramatic or frightening. That's what made it worse. On the table were items placed with care. A folded cloth, a small bowl, a few objects I didn't recognize, arranged neatly, like they belonged there. There was nothing messy, nothing aggressive. Just order, intention. My stomach tightened. My wife stood there, her back to me. Her posture was relaxed. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't panicking. She moved like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I watched as she touched the folded cloth, then closed her eyes briefly. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't chant dramatically. She whispered, softly, steadily, in a tone that felt practiced. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the change in the air. It wasn't fear exactly. It was pressure, like standing too close to something you don't understand but know you shouldn't touch. I realized something then that made my chest feel hollow. This wasn't new to her. Whatever this was, it hadn't started tonight. My test hadn't created it. It had only revealed it. I stepped back slowly, my breath shallow, my mind racing. I felt foolish. I felt betrayed. I felt afraid in my own home. Every memory I had of her, her smiles, her calmness, her silence, began to rearrange themselves into something I didn't recognize. As I turned to leave, my foot brushed lightly against the floor. The sound was small, but she stopped. She didn't turn immediately. She paused, as if listening. My heart pounded so hard I was sure she could hear it. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. Then she spoke. "Why are you awake?" Her voice was calm, not startled, not angry. I stepped forward slowly, my throat dry. I asked her what she was doing. I asked her why that room was open. I asked questions I had been holding back for too long. She turned to face me. Her expression was not defensive, not guilty, just calm. She said, "You weren't supposed to see this yet." That word, yet, echoed in my mind. She took a step toward me, and instinctively, I stepped back. I realized then how vulnerable I felt, how alone, how little control I actually had. She didn't chase me, she didn't explain, she simply said, "Go back to bed. We'll talk later." But I knew something had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I returned to the bedroom, my legs weak, my thoughts tangled. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall as she moved around the house again, calmly, quietly, like nothing had changed. But everything had, because that night, I understood something painful and terrifying. I hadn't tested my wife's loyalty. I had stepped into a truth she had been hiding in plain sight. And whatever it was far deeper than I was prepared for. That night changed the way I see silence. Some people think silence means peace, but I learned that silence can also be a warning. It can hide truths that words refuse to reveal. I went to bed that night beside someone I thought I fully understood, but I realized too late that knowing a person's routine is not the same as knowing their heart. I did not sleep. My mind replayed every moment we had shared, every calm smile, every quiet response, every time I ignored my instincts because I wanted peace more than truth. What I saw in that room didn't just raise questions, it rewrote my memories. The hardest part was not fear. It was the realization that the person I trusted most had been living a life I never questioned. And once a truth shows itself, even for a moment, it cannot be unseen. By morning, everything felt the same on the surface. The house looked normal, the streets outside were alive. Life continued as if nothing had happened. But inside me, something had shifted permanently, because I knew this was only the beginning. In part 2, the questions will no longer stay buried. The calm conversations will start to crack. And the truth behind what she was doing, and why, will slowly come into the light. If you've ever ignored a warning sign, if you've ever trusted someone completely, only to realize too late that you didn't know them at all, then this story will stay with you. Right finger subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2, where everything hidden begins to surface.